And sorry, there was an echo. Scott, if you could please take the roll.
Will do. Kim Barrett. I see Kim is just joining. I'll give her a moment. George Blumenthal.
Here.
Ray Bonneville.
Present.
Leandra Clark Harvey. Leandra.
You're muted.
I see you're moving, but we don't have audio on you yet, Leandra. Still no. No, but I'll record you as president. I think we've established that.
I can read her lips, Scott.
Yes.
Yes. Here.
Great, thank you. Isabel Barone? Isabel?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can testify that Leandra is here.
Okay. Elena Flowers?
Present.
David Higgins? Vito Ambassiani?
Present.
Pat Levitt?
Present.
Linda Malkus?
Here.
Chris Miaskowski? Yael White?
Here.
And Kim Barrett?
Present.
Great, thank you very much. Maria?
Thank you, Scott. I believe we're just going to get right into the presentation today, and that Amy Adams will be presenting to us today. So Amy, take it away. You guys are on mute, by the way.
Okay, you missed me saying thank you, Maria, and thank you, members of the board.
You're welcome.
At the last board meeting, I gave a presentation in which I said that if CIRM is going to raise awareness, everyone in the organization needs to be singing the same song. Today, I'm going to present the results of a team retreat in which we discuss not what song we should be singing, but to whom and why. I'm going to talk about the results of that retreat, along with a set of multi-year high-level objectives that we developed and that will be guiding our work going forward with your comments and review. Our retreat included the team you're familiar with, that is Esteban Cortez, Christina Smith, Katie Sharifi, and Aditi Desai. We also included Holly McCormick, who is supporting us as our writing contractor, and Jacqueline Hankin, who supports our outreach efforts, as well as Maria Bonneville, who was there for a portion. Although most of this talk focuses on the team's future objectives, I'll also be mentioning a few ways in which we are already moving forward with trying to achieve greater awareness for CIRM, and I'd be happy to take questions on that afterwards. Okay, so CIRM's mission. We all know CIRM's mission, but it seems particularly important to remember what we're working towards in a conversation about how communications help CIRM achieve its mission. The people of California gave us money twice with the idea that this organization would deliver cures and/or therapies. Everyone at CIRM, including communications, needs to have top of mind the need to deliver on that mission. In our retreat, we focused explicitly on objectives that help CIRM achieve its mission, and those are the objectives I'll be sharing with you here. Okay. Here is a mission statement we wrote for the communications and outreach team. Throughout this presentation, I'll be showing how this mission will help communications support CIRM's mission, and I'll just read this out loud. Our mission is to drive awareness of and support for CIRM's programs and accomplishments, mostly in California. Although sometimes we want to talk outside California.
Say it again.
It's on the slide behind you. Yeah, but Vito, I can send this to you.
Oh, good.
But we're pausing briefly to give Vito a moment to look at this mission.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, why? So the first question we needed to address in our retreat was why? Why does having the people of California know about and support the organization help CIRM achieve our mission? I'm going to come back to this question at the end of the presentation because I'd really love to hear all of your thoughts on this question. We have to know why we are communicating in order to know what to communicate and to whom. So Esteban? Okay, here's a quote that will look familiar to at least one person on the call. This text is from a paper in Neuron by board member Pat Levitt, along with a colleague. I think it does a great job of summarizing how communicating to many different audiences can move science forward. Bringing people together around shared goals is one example of why we want to be communicating. And I'm just going to pause for a second to give everyone a chance to read this great quote. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the first thing we did was narrow down what audiences we want to focus on in our retreat. In previous work, the communications team had a long list of audiences, all of which remain relevant. But we wanted to think about which audiences are most critical in this moment. We broke those audiences into 4 loose categories, and there's a lot of overlaps between these categories. And also, it essentially goes without saying, but I will say it, all of these categories can be broken down into much higher resolution. For example, the California citizens is a broad group of people. And in different contexts, we want to break these down in higher resolution. But for this conversation, we're leaving it as 4 primary audiences: California citizens, lawmakers, patients/patient advocates, and scientists/industry members. We need the people of California writ large to support CIRM because we're all seeing the effects at the federal level of a public that doesn't support research, and we don't want to see that in California. Lawmakers are critical for moving policy and programs forward, and they can help reinforce the value of CIRM in their districts. We need people to participate in clinical trials. We need scientists and industry members to apply for funding, use CIRM tools. They're also powerful voices in advocating for the value of CIRM-funded research in California. Okay, there we go. This slide.
Amy?
Oh yeah, hi.
Sorry, I could not contain myself anymore. I would suggest you change that to California residents. Not everybody's a citizen.
Oh, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for mentioning that, and I will absolutely do that.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a really fantastic catch. Okay, these are the same 4 categories, and they're just written differently because we'll have a series of slides that ladder up to this. So it's the same group of California residents, patients, lawmakers, and scientists. Okay, next slide. Okay, this slide is intentionally a bit messy, just because I'm trying to show the various ways that these audiences benefit CIRM's audiences or CIRM's mission. So support from all of these groups will help CIRM deliver on our mission now and in the future. I also show here how our goals support the strategic allocation framework. The SAF defines how our programs enable CIRM to achieve its mission. So communicating with these audiences directly supports goals defined by the SAF and therefore supports CIRM's mission. For example, SAF objectives having to do with successful clinical trials require patients participating in those clinical trials. So communications that build trust in CIRM and awareness of our trials can help those goals. Similarly, having scientists and industry members know about and support CIRM can lead to applications and use of CIRM tools. Those outcomes directly support any SAF goal involving CIRM funding. And lawmakers who support CIRM could help with policy issues relating to affordability and accessibility. Okay, next slide. So we've talked about what we want people to do and how doing those things benefits CIRM, but how do we get people to do those things? There's a communications framework I like a lot called Think, Feel, Do, because people do things based on how they feel, not on facts. And a great case in point is vaccine acceptance. There's plenty of accurate information about vaccines out there, but if you want people to vaccinate their kids, you need communications that tap into how people feel. A communication strategy that focuses on how people feel is more likely to get the results you want. So in this slide, I combine the Think, Feel, Do framework. I combine think and feel on one line just for the sake of expedience. At a retreat, we talked about what feelings would lead to the kinds of actions we want to inspire. For all audiences, we felt that it comes down to a mixture of hope, pride, confidence, trust, and excitement. You're going to notice that many of these are the same words that board members at the last meeting expressed when they talked about CIRM. I think we all agree with each other on these words, and there might be some to add. And I want to make one point. It kind of looks like some of these words are lining up under individual audiences, and that's not the intent. Instead, I'm hoping to show that this collection of words applies to all of those audiences, although what builds trust in one audience is likely different from what builds trust in a different audience, and that's where content strategy comes into play. Okay. How we elicit these feelings comes down to getting the right content to the right audiences, and that means making sure our various channels are well targeted and that our content is designed for specific audiences. Here you can see on the bottom the various kinds of content this team produces. We write press releases, we have blogs, videos, web content, we send emails, we hold webinars, we produce an annual report, we have flyers, and this is just top of mind. We do many other things. And that content goes out through a variety of channels, through emails, through social media, newsletters, outreach events, one-on-one meetings, our website. Again, it looks like these things are lining up under audiences, but are meant to show that all of these different kinds of content and the channels apply in different ways to different audiences. And obviously the channels aren't one-to-one. All audiences see our web content, we know that. Although we try to have content separated for each audience. And we don't know exactly who sees what social media, but we have a general sense of who sees what based on the kinds of content that does well on each channel, and we do monitor that.
Amy,
Yeah,
on the think and feel,
yep.
I would love to do a word cloud.
Oh, that's a good idea.
There might be even a few more words that
Yeah.
I might think about. But
I'm guessing we might come up with more words out of this meeting, but I think a word cloud sounds fantastic.
yeah, because it's the intermixed as opposed to you over here, the idea, everybody feels these things. I would put
Yeah.
awe, because I like the idea of science and CIRM as awe.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that a lot. Okay. I'm writing that down. Okay, next slide, Esteban. This is just a simplified view of what I showed on the last slide. We want to deliver the right content, the right channels, eliciting the right feeling to get our audiences to do something that supports CIRM and our mission. At our last board meeting, several board members had comments that were relevant to this slide. A few mentioned the need to make sure our content was interesting, engaging, and elicited feelings of hope, trust, etc. We have hired a contract writer who is starting to help us increase our storytelling, and we will be tracking how that content does across our many channels, and we'll be sharing that content with this group. I also heard suggestions that we should do surveys or focus groups to make sure we know what people in California know about CIRM, what their interests are, what concerns they have, and that information could help us focus our content. We have started having conversations with a few vendors to begin that process, and I hope to have more to share with this group at future meetings. In the meantime, although we don't have focus group information, we do have really good metrics across our different channels that assess readership and engagement, and that alone can help guide us in terms of what content is resonating with our audiences. Next slide. Okay, so based on the Think, Feel, Do framework and the information I presented, we developed 5 high-level objectives. Each of these are going to take multiple years to achieve. We'll be reviewing our progress each year and adjusting our yearly goals and strategies accordingly. And over time, I'll be coming back to this group with progress towards these objectives. The first very high-level objective has to do with the California residents, try not to read my notes here, Isabel, California residents, which is increasing support among this audience. And this objective stems directly from our team's mission. Next. This goes a lot like the first one, but for patients and patient advocates. I phrased it around our accessibility programs because what we specifically need from this audience is participation in clinical trials. Even if they don't participate, they might encourage friends or relatives to participate if they know about our accessibility programs. Again, we need increased support from California lawmakers. And finally, not finally, This one's a little different. We don't just need scientists or industry members to support us. We need them to know that we're driving discoveries towards therapies and that we're leaders. We want them to look at us for tools, resources, and funding. And finally, the previous 4 objectives were around broad audiences, but we also need to streamline our processes to be more effective. We are a very small team, and we are particularly small for the scale of what we're trying to accomplish.
Amy, could you speak a little bit to how you'll measure these things?
Oh, I will. Can I finish this last objective and then I'll come back to that because I think
Sure.
that's cool. We need to be as efficient as possible if we're going to achieve these objectives. That includes revising our content strategy, so the time we spend on any content is serving a strategic purpose, refining our use of various channels to ensure that each of the channels we maintain is serving a strategic audience, and aligning better with those who are direct points of contact with scientists and lawmakers. This objective is going to make sure the entire team is focused on what's important. And yeah, Kim, I can address that. So I think measuring these is pretty broad. Increased support for CIRM among the California public. We need to do surveys and focus groups. I mean, there's just no question. We can get an indirect pulse of that one, sort of by how much readership we get of our content or engagement on our social channels. That's a pretty loose metric, but it helps. But I think we can't really address that one without surveys and focus groups, I think. The same is true with lawmakers. I think we'll really want to be working with particularly Maria on that to understand awareness and support among lawmakers. The third one is scientists. So again, we're going to want to work with probably Rose's team and others to track. I think this one might be less of a hard metric and more of a soft metric. How many applications are we getting? What kinds of questions are they getting when they go to scientific meetings? I think we can address that metric that way. And then the accessibility programs, I think that's going to be in terms of our people, are we getting patients recruited into alpha clinics? Actually, the last one I should say, streamline communication processes. That's going to be another one where I think the metric is a little loose. I'm trying to think of things within the team that we can track in terms of how long it takes us to do things, and see if we can reduce the time that it takes us to get things done. And I don't have that written out yet. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So let's get on the next slide. Okay, so this is just the same 5 goals. I have a feeling you guys are going to see a lot of this slide over the coming years as we talk about how we were making progress towards these goals. And then the almost final slide. This is just a reminder, and I might be bringing this slide back too. This is a reminder that each of these goals are directly focused on supporting CIRM's mission. And via directly supporting SAF goals. So we are being very careful to make sure we are aligned with what other people around, other teams at CIRM are doing. Okay, the final slide. So now I'm turning, a lot of this talk is about what my team thinks the reason why we are communicating is.
Amy, can I interrupt you for a moment? Leandra has a comment.
Oh, please, hello.
You, and hopefully I'm not getting ahead of you here, but thank you for the overview of the importance of comms. I know you're still in the midst of explaining that to us. You know, I do think to align myself with Kim that the focus on strategy is going to be really important here. I think we get right the need for comms and why it's so important and why this is critical, and a little bit of fast forwarding. How do we actualize that? And then what work and thought has gone into the strategy pieces of it? And then also, how can the members of the CIRM board, the ICOC, help to really assist your team and you in actualizing that, right? I think that's really what I'm waiting for. Like, what can I do? How can we help with the thought leadership and partnership? So might be getting, a little ahead of you, so I apologize, but I'm eager to hear that and to get there. So if we don't get there this meeting, looking forward to, and hopefully the upcoming meetings, because I think that's really where we can dig in.
Yeah, I think you got one meeting ahead of me. I want to make sure we have buy-in here. And that I've heard the thoughts of the people in this group about what the importance of communications is and what we should be working towards. And when I've heard that, and I make sure I kind of, I understand that we're all developing a strategy towards the same set of goals. I think that is your next presentation. In terms of what you can do as a board member to help me, I think what you're all good at doing is giving us your thoughts and opinions. But also, you know, I didn't mention this board as one of our audiences, but the board is an incredibly powerful resource for spreading awareness of CIRM. And hopefully I can be working with all of you to find ways to be talking about CIRM and to thinking about what the examples are that we want to use to promote CIRM. So I hope that's helpful. And in fact, you got one sentence ahead of me. This is the end of my prepared portion of this. I'm open to taking any and all questions from the board. I really am interested in hearing how this group thinks, what role this group thinks communications plays in helping CIRM achieve its missions, because your comments will help me think about strategy. So I'm going to end my prepared comments now, and I'm excited to hear what you all have to say.
Thank you, Amy. I'd like to open the floor for questions for the board or answers to how does communications help CIRM achieve its mission? George.
Oh, goodness, I didn't realize I'd be first. Well, first of all, I want to thank you. I think this is a really uplifting to think about the future of communications at CIRM, and I'm really glad you've taken some steps back and to think about both the message and the medium and the audience of these messages. I think that's very positive. I wanted to just raise a point that touches on the why issue. And the point I would want to make is that we now live in a very strange time. We live in a time when science is no longer a driving feature of science agencies at the federal level. We live at a time where health decisions are being made based upon things other than serious medical and scientific advice. So we live in a very strange and hopefully unusual time. And I think this is both a challenge and an opportunity for CIRM Communications to really convey the message that we are a scientific organization, that we are supporting real research that is finding solutions that will benefit people and will benefit people throughout California, and that we are, really a serious organization and hopefully a model to what we hope the national, model of science and medical research will lead to. So I think that's also an opportunity.
Thank
Thank you, George. Amy? I wasn't sure if you said something, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying thank you. I mean, I think all of us in this room and all of us on the call are probably thinking the same thing about how terrifying it is at the federal level and the real need to have people understand the value that organizations like CIRM bring.
Kim?
Yeah, I think just building on what George said and what your response just was, we are at a crucial moment. And I think we have opportunities to align with other areas where either California is going it alone or making regional alliances. I just saw a thing about vaccine recommendations that California was going to partner with Oregon and Washington to develop its own science and evidence-based recommendations, recognizing that our federal agencies seem to be ceding their responsibility to provide generalized advice. And so sort of hitching our wagon to California as a place where we're going to make our own decisions about what's the right way to go forward is a possible avenue to push for CIRM. And then I also think that we have to be very careful in defining what we mean by support. So support was a key goal, and pretty much every constituency you want to support some. But what do we want from that support? What tangible action do we want people to take to demonstrate that they support us?
Amy, did you want to respond to that, or shall I move to Pat?
Well, move on to Pat. I agree. I think support is a bit loose. I think that's something that we really want to define and be able to measure. And also, but I would like to hear from this group what they think support means and what we want. Yeah.
Pat?
Yeah, I mean, go on wax poetically about what support means. Just to point out that that quote was not generated by AI. So I think, you know, Amy, that was great. I think you touched on a lot of really important points. I think the point that I would just want to emphasize is that how people feel, which translates also into a belief system, which translates also into a cultural component, I think is extraordinarily important, way undervalued by scientists. And since I'm a scientist, I can criticize my scientific peers. They don't understand that. They think it's all about communicating facts and figures. And so I think that component and learning more about that in terms of the groups that you've identified that are our main targets, I think is really important. So congratulations on that. And the focus groups are going to give you that. And that's going to really help. So doing that sooner rather than later, I think is great. The only other thing I wanted to say is, you know, there was this graphic on LinkedIn that I actually took time to look at. It's this graphic about how people spend their time from 1930 to 1924. Did anyone else see that graphic? No? Okay. Well, good news is that I wasn't born in 1930. But
just a little after.
they broke down the topics into online, friends, coworkers, bar, restaurant, family, school, church, neighbors, and college. And of course, you can probably guess what flipped starting around 2010. Up until 2010, online was like, you know, 1% or 0%, not represented. In 2024, it's now 61% where people spend online. The reason I mention this is because I think crafting communication is also about how we reach people, right? How we reach our various audiences, the four that you identified, Amy. And it goes from, you know, back in the 1950s and 60s, there was a close relationship between friends, family, and school. They're all in their like low 20s, 20%, 20, you know, et cetera, in terms of the time spent. Now it's 61% online. The next closest is friends at 14%. So it's a real challenge because if that's the way most people are spending their time, that's the way most people are going to get their communication. And crafting that in a way that's going to penetrate the competing noise is going to be a real challenge that you already know, Amy, I'm sure, in your team. So I just want to mention that. And if anyone's interested, this graphic actually moves. It's a video. It's worth looking at just for the shock value. I'll stop there.
Just for those on the screen, I'll have you know that people in the room are finding the graphic and showing it to each other. So thank you for pointing that out, Pat. And you know, on the topic of people being online, you know, that, you know, obviously we have social channels, we have, you know, email, we have website, we have lots of channels that are online. But as you rightly point out, it's hugely fragmented. You know, some people might be all about their favorite, you know, Facebook group, and other people are only on LinkedIn. And, you know, it's finding people where they are, and trying to put content in those places that is interesting, but it's highly fragmented, and I think it is a real challenge. Yeah. And thank you for that graphic. It's great.
Leandra?
Yeah, I'm gonna go through Maria.
I was just going to say, in terms of, you know, kind of ideas of how to utilize, you know, and I really think, on top of what, you know, Pat was saying, it's really the stories. It's about how you feel, right? So how do you trigger feelings? That's what triggers connection, remembrance, right? And so I think that's something we can do better with. I know there's been a lot of talk about it, and there has been some campaigning and some efforts, but we always talk about patient stories. So thinking about the assets that we have patient stories because we have patients that have been funded and have good, positive things to say. Also, we have a board. We have a board of members who may have personal connection to some of the rare disease areas or career areas that they work in, and literally like an assessment of them saying, what's your personal connection to CIRM? Why do you believe in it? You could highlight those types of stories. So I think that taking inventory of what you have already, your assets in terms of communications, maximizing and utilizing those can also be really helpful because you're using faces connected with CIRMs and stories connected with those faces so that people are understanding, well, why does Leandra actually, why is she involved in this? Like, why is that important? What does that have to do with her being a behavioral health, CEO, or why is, so I think that that's another opportunity to look at the inventory we have and the people that are invested and to make those connections with the public, if that makes sense.
I think those patient stories are incredibly impactful. I will say one of the projects we've just started with the contract writer I mentioned, we are starting to do some profiles of board members. I think I just heard you volunteer yourself for that project because I think it's really important to talk about these people who are behind CIRM and what they bring. We also have, in addition to these high-level objectives, everyone on my team has written a yearly set of goals working towards these objectives. And several different members of the team have goals focused on increasing our outreach to patients, finding patients who are interested in being profiled, getting more of those profiles being written. So we specifically have goals around trying to get those patient stories because I think they're incredibly important. I mean, these are the people who we're trying to help, and these are the friends and family of everyone in California.
Isabel?
Thank you. Glad folks have a lot of ideas. One of the thoughts that I had, Amy, is to actually do sort of a landscape analysis. Who is California? And why would they care? And who would they care about? One of the things that I was thinking about was how many Latino groups around the state of California, connected to science or not, but are human, have family care, are themselves patients, or have family members who are patients, and sometimes are not in touch with some of these issues, sometimes because of a language barrier, sometimes because they're too busy doing everything else besides paying attention to what's going on in science. And so I think that it would be very helpful if each of the board members also could name 5 groups they know of that should learn, should be interested, and find a way to connect the message to them. You'll be interested in this because CIRM, spends millions of dollars each year, and this is the kind of economic generator it is in terms of the state of California. Send it out to the business groups. I would send out to Latino groups of varying degree, anywhere from Latinas in Tech to the Chamber of Commerce, different ways in which CIRM and stem cell and this research is making a difference in the lives of Latino, and why they should care about it, and why they should be talking about it, and why, when it comes around to supporting it, why it could make a difference in community. It becomes labor intensive, but as Pat's pointing out, given the social media, there are even places in social media where you would find a gaggle of Latino. And so I think in that way, the board could be incredibly helpful in trying to name some of those interest groups and even helping you think through the kinds of messages to reach them. But always, as everybody is pointing out, with a story, with why it makes a difference and helps their community, their family, their larger state, why, it's good investment. And yes, we acknowledge we're in some troubled times, because that's authentic, that's transparent, and it's true. Why perhaps the work that we're doing, given the attack on science, is even more crucial today, because we all believe in science. We'll convince them we all believe in science, but things like that. But the landscape analysis, who are we in California? And I'm talking about even the demographic breakdown.
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly important point. I mean, I broadened this to be the California residents, just in the interest of expediency and time and space, and but you're absolutely right. California residents are an incredibly broad group of people with very different interests, and different things that frame how they feel. So it's not a monolith at all.
No, it isn't.
No, it isn't.
Remember, Latinos, some of us dance salsa and some of us eat salsa.
You're a very diverse group.
Mhm.
I wanted to make a quick comment, and I think this is something that Amy and her team have already started working on messaging and how we're getting a message out specifically around the strategic allocation framework, what that is, and how it and how it is being perceived or not by the public. And I think that's important to understand that there has been an acknowledgement that we need to do more around how we frame the importance of the work that we do and to who and to who we're communicating. So that work is ongoing. And I just wanted to point that out in case Amy did not get a chance to express that. But I'm going to go to Pat next.
Yeah. So I'm gonna challenge something and see how Amy feels about this. So I've heard communicate. Yeah, right. I've heard communication experts talk about individual stories in two different ways. One is that they're very important and raise sort of the emotional connection between the audience and the story. The other is that unless it's a story that has broad relevance to the audience, it becomes an individual story that most people in the audience can't identify with. And therefore, while in the moment it feels good, it's not very effective in getting the audience to continue to think about about whatever the topic is in an important way. I wonder what your thoughts are about this, because I've heard both. Stories are important when you're talking about large, broad concepts that you think the majority of those who are in and any particular audience are going to resonate with. And humans do think in stories for sure. But these individual stories, I'm just wondering, Amy, what you think about those.
Yeah, okay. I could talk to you all day about content strategy. But I'm gonna walk the middle road here. I think storytelling, I think stories are, as you say, stories are what drive how we think and feel. We are storytelling people. And I think individual stories about individual people can help you really relate to that story. I think there's two ways of thinking about individual stories though. If I'm writing for not CIRM, right? If I'm writing for a newspaper and I want to do a profile of, someone in the community, I would just write a nice little profile about the person in the community without really having an objective. So that's a different kind of storytelling that it's not purpose driven. I think when we think about CIRM, if we think about the kinds of individuals we want to tell stories about, we would be picking people who tell a broader story. Someone who participated in a clinical trial, and we can tell their story, but weave in some information about the clinical trials and about how we conduct them in a safe way, and about the guardrails on our clinical trials. So I think you tell an individual story that people will resonate with in a much more strategic way, is my answer. And I don't know how you feel about that, Pat.
No, I mean, I think you hit key points. You can tell an individual story and include content that has a broader meaning for folks. That is,
That's right.
It's not just a story about an N of one clinical trial. It's a story about an N of one clinical trial in the context of why clinical trials in general, as you said, are so important and effective and can change the lives of many. It doesn't have to be about the N of one. You know, and it doesn't have to be about the rare disorder. It has to be that the process and what it means. So I think there are strategies to deal with that, and I think your answer is great. Yeah.
I think the profile is sort of the Trojan horse. The really empathetic character in the profile is what gets the content through the door. And then inside that Trojan horse, you have whatever strategic information that you want to get inside someone's head.
So Amy, I'm going to pick it up from there. And maybe this, go to Pat's and all of our researchers in the room. Based on something I learned from a saleswoman who talked to us about research and audience and selling people, being able to figure out who to sell what and how. And when she said three things, that there are three kinds of responses from humans. One is the people who see, the other, the people who feel, and the other people who are the thinkers. In other words, that 10% of the engineers, you have to give them that hard data. For the people who feel, you have to give them something that touches the heart. And for the people who see, that's how they think. They see, this is me, I'm a visual. You give me a hard data and I start crunching it into a picture in my mind. What does this translate to? And so I think about that when I did television as well, that people are hearing the information from me in very different ways and, mixing it up and interpreting it the way they need to in order to understand it. And so I think that to Amy's point, it's not just the story, but that's kind of like the tease, and it gets those people who, and they feel, and, that gets them. And then you have to create these visual ways of people hearing and thinking what you're telling them. And then they see these pictures that make sense. And then there, of course, are data-driven folk who like to get all of the dirty details around that. So I think a story still is the beginning, but it is not the end all and be all. So I always like to grab people's attention with that, and then add all of those very pertinent details. So about a specific disease, or about the work in general, about a scientist making a difference in people's lives. There are different ways to capture that. But I don't disagree with you, Pat. It's just, it is research driven about how to speak to audiences. So I think we're all going to be on the same page here.
Yeah, we're on the same page because interject since you mentioned my name. So the way that I give my presentations, for example, on early child development, I talk about language development, and it has a see component, a feel component, and a think component to it, right? Mixing in different research data from songbirds to infants, and it resonates with all three components that you have. There is a feel component, there is a see component, and there's a think component, a data-driven component. And I've given that part of my presentation to all different kinds of lay groups, not science groups. And it does exactly what you said, Isabel. It hits on all three. And the audiences, they come away with the same understanding of why language learning is social. It's not isolated. It's actually a social exercise, and it's because of what you just said. You have all three components.
Yeah.
I think Vito, I think his hand was up next.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. First of all, talking about personal messages and how we can contribute to that effort, I just want to report that I had a wonderful introduction to our new contract person who's going to help with the writing, Holly. We had a wonderful time. It was, we certainly filled the hour, and to what extent telling one's personal story, a story that everybody on our board has their own individual version to tell. I think singly and in the aggregate, that could be very powerful and multifactorial in as far as its use. On a different issue, I asked Esteban to go back to one slide, the one that you're all looking at now, which includes the outreach objectives. And I just want to make the comment that, and first of all, thank you for all the work that went into this, the whole team. But I'm a little proprietary toward it because I have another allied, not different in degree, if not in kind, effort that the Office of the Chair is interested in, which is how to sustain CIRM throughout the next number of years. And I look at these goals and I see that they are synchronous, they're harmonious, and some of them I could just capture word for word and make them my own. So I like this very, very much. And I think that it's a very healthy overlap between our two efforts.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm gonna give you credit to my team here. One of the things I really like about what came out of that retreat is that it just shows the way CIRM or the way communications is really kind of embedded in every different group at CIRM. I think when I look across my colleagues at CIRM, there are bits and pieces of each of these that they could take on. And I also think as they're developing goals, when I look at their goals, I see ways that our goals overlap with theirs. And I think that's really healthy. And Vito, I'm glad because I look forward to supporting your efforts.
Thank you.
Yael?
Thank you. So I just wanted to echo what both Isabel and Pat have said, and I love the three-prong approach so that everyone is taking home a nugget in the way that they learn. And then there's telling a story, and we want it to be impactful to the community that we're speaking to, and we want it relatable to the specific community that we're speaking to. And I think I haven't really heard anyone say this, and maybe it's just understood, but I feel like specifically in this time, we're also on an uphill battle of, just general fear, right? Of why science, why this specific type of science, what science do I trust? And just, I think it's critical to just to address that in any printed material, spoken material. I just feel like it's specifically in this climate, we're fighting an uphill battle of letting people know that we exist, letting people know that this is valid and purposeful and hopeful, and that it's legitimate. And I don't want that to be overlooked. The idea of the fear in specific communities, I think is something we also need to address.
We've long talked about that, Yael. Absolutely. The worst thing that could happen is there is a therapy that is available that really, will help so many people, but because of misinformation, no one wants it. And so that's definitely something that's been top of mind. So thanks for bringing that back up. I appreciate that. Are there any other comments from board members? Amy, do you have anything else? Did you want to talk about the work around the SAF a little bit?
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing that up, Maria. There are two ongoing, there's a lot of ongoing efforts. There's kind of two new efforts that I didn't find a place for in my prepared notes, but I do want to bring up. And one is the effort that Maria alluded to, and I'll come back to that in just a second. The second is, and we are in the process of hiring a PR firm. Although it is true that people are per pat spending 61% of their time online these days, traditional media remains among the best ways to get the word out to people about big news. So we are working with a PR firm to try to do some more traditional PR. And I just this morning got some proposals in, so I can say absolutely nothing about the quality of those proposals. I think we're going to hire, but I'm excited about the possibility. So I'll come back to that at a future meetings. But to follow up on Maria's comments, we have engaged an organization. It's Valve Spring, who I believe some of you have worked with in the past. They've done previous work with CIRM. And we engaged with them because I I'd say primarily around the SAF, but it's a little broader than that. Just this idea that the SAF really is the embodiment of how CIRM is going to take the money we have and deliver on our mission. And that mission is enormous and enormously impactful. So we wanted an organization to help us tell that story of how CIRM is really being quite, I heard someone, I can't remember who, used the word purposeful. We're being very purposeful in how we take the money that we've been given by the people of California and using that money to deliver cures and therapies that are safe and effective. And we engaged Val Spring to help us tell that story. And this is work that's going to come back to you. Currently, we're talking about the December board meeting. We'll see. It might come back to you in the subcommittee first, but it's something that I'm really excited about and I think has the potential for huge impact.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that.
Maria, can I just make one quick point?
Sure.
So, first of all, Amy, it was a great job, and to the team, great job. The Communications Subcommittee has been looking to pivot to a more strategic approach on all aspects of communications, external and internal, by the way. We didn't really talk a lot about how much we're spending time making sure that messages through Amy and her team are aligned amongst all our different groups here internally. But we've taken the board's direction to heart, and by having Amy come in to head up strategic communications, I hope everybody can see that we are successfully now focusing specifically on that as it pertains to dealing with all the relevant stakeholder audiences and developing strategies with aligned messages for each, but tailored to each of those in turn to get maximum results, to increase awareness about what we do, what the importance of it is, what the importance of it is within the context of science in general, and how critical our work is on behalf of the residents of California, the taxpayers of California. So I just want to congratulate our team, Amy, and all of our team for the great work that they're doing. And I really think we're headed in a great direction in achieving our goal of getting the word out as to what we're all about and why it's so important. So thank you, Maria.
Thank you, JT. Are there any other comments from the board? Any last, anything? Pat, I know you're dying to say something. See, you came off mute. Thank you. Please.
Wonderful meeting. Congratulations, Maria.
Well,
how can it be a bad meeting when there's a quote from me that's included?
Well, you know, that may have been
beginning. Set the tone.
Whatever. Yeah.
So you all get 7 minutes of your life back. Thank you. And this meeting is adjourned.